Hey everybody, what's happening? I'm back with another quick film review for you, and I'm happy to report the trilogy is complete. Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 3 is now on Prime Video, and all things considered, it's a very good adaptation of one of the most important stories in comic book history. So no spoilers here, but of course, if you have read the original comics by Wolfman and Perez, you know what to expect and what I'm going to say mostly. I will be mentioning what happens at the end of part two, of course, as well, since this movie is completely incomprehensible unless you've seen part one and two. So definitely want to watch the first two first, you know. And so Crisis Part Two, it ended on a down note, but Crisis Part 3 is obviously going to be like the Return of the Jedi of this trilogy, right? It's gonna right some wrongs, but with a lot of sacrifice here too. It's a very good movie here, Part 3, very different than the original one that DC published back in the mid 80s, with several key characters dying off or maybe just being replaced with newer versions. It really is a DC fanboy's dream, though, because nearly all of their beloved roster of heroes are here to fight against the end of existence. So, as I mentioned, in part two ended on a down note, and as it should, being part two of three, right? It kind of should be the Empire Strikes Back of the trilogy. And what happened at the end of that film was that Supergirl, Kara Zor-El, she destroys the passive monitor in a rage, and the evil anti-monitor then shows up to wipe out all of these Earths in the multiverse, and we don't really know why. We're wiping out everything, but that's what the Anti-Monitor is. Though he isn't quite what he seems to be here. He is seemingly indestructible, though. Worlds keep getting wiped out, and we get a few worlds based on older DC animated series, and that's a real treat for DC fans since the 70s, really. But that kind of stuff's already been kind of revealed, in trailers and whatnot, so we know who's in there. And I was also very happy to see several characters who were in the original Crisis because they were purchased by DC a few years earlier. Then the comics came out, and then we got those Charlton comics characters. So those kind of characters like Captain Atom, Brett Dalton is the voice, Ted Kord, Blue Beetle, voiced by Matt Lanter, and The Question, voiced by David Kaye. Man, I love those characters. They're fantastic. Great to see them here. Now, since part one was released in January, the series started being centered around the Flash, Barry Allen mostly, and how he's zipping back and forth through time, seeing Earth 3 get wiped out. Really, Barry, he doesn't really know it, but he's the key to all of this chaos. Another character that they focus on in part 3 that I didn't mention in part 2 because I didn't want to spoil it is John Constantine, who in the comics was a different character named Pariah, the last of his world. He's the witness to many Earths being wiped out, so he's the witness to all this death. And Constantine's memory, though, keeps getting wiped out. And so Batman, Dr. Fate, Wonder Woman, and Green Lantern John Stewart, voiced by Alden Hodge, who was Hawkman in Black Adam. Anyway, just a little trivia note there. They all attempt to find John Constantine, who is from this Earth that existed before the multiverse, before all this craziness. They need to get him to remember how all this chaos world-ending, event really got started, so that they can go back in time and undo this. The powerful Lord of Order, Nabu, Dr. Fate, in other words, he is tasked with jogging Constantine's memory. Now, Batman, voiced by Jensen Ackles, very well. He gets more screen time here with the Bat family as well, including Batman Beyond, voiced by the original actor, Will Friedle. Very cool to see and to hear. Lex Luthor, voiced by Zachary Quinto, he's really cool, and he's forced to ally with the heroes to save his world. But can you really trust Lex Luthor? Not usually, right? Not usually. Can all the heroes and villains team up to defeat this enormous world-destroying anti-monitor and save all of existence from being erased? Will the heroes succeed through science and sacrifice? Well, I won't tell. You'll just have to watch. But you know, there are so many characters. It must have been a real challenge for the screenwriters to find a place for them all. You know, which characters die and which characters don't die. You know, and what are really the plans for the future, or is this just like its own self-contained story, as it seems to be? You know, it doesn't seem like there's going to be any kind of continuation of this afterwards in any kind of canon. It may require another viewing though of all three, really, just to recall what happened to certain characters here. So yeah, so changes, I mean, I'm cool with a lot of the changes. You know, the Constantine being pariah, there's no Lady Quark, you know, or anything like that. No Superboy Prime, you know, but that's okay with me, because there's already too many characters. You know, these multiple Supermen and multiple Black Canaries and multiple other characters. You know, there's so many of the same characters, and so many sidekicks that have similar powers and stuff. It's I don't know, there's just so many to keep track of. But I'm really glad that much of the original comic story is preserved here, with just a few minor changes. So it can get convoluted and bogged down with explaining, you know, how any of this makes sense, even in a fantastical universe full of superpowered beings. But it's all done very well. It's executed really nicely, with a lot of love and consideration for these beloved characters. When some of them die, you do start to worry about the rest of them. You know, who's next? You know, so there's suspense there, and all the actors they just do a great job. The Psycho Pirate plays an important part here, as does Supergirl. Again, you know, just like part 2, I was very happy they brought in a certain character who is known as the Spectre. The Spectre is the spirit of vengeance in DC Comics, so he's the wrath of God, in other words, and he's played very nicely by Lou Diamond Phillips. And there's even a reference to Jack Kirby's New Gods characters as well. So, you know, New Genesis and Apocalypse and that stuff. So very cool to see. Again, more fan service. The ending may seem unsatisfying to some, until you think about it. You know, it took me about 5 minutes to think about it, go, nah, I don't really like that ending, or do I? Maybe I do. Yeah, I kind of do like that ending. That ending actually does make sense when you reflect on it after. Think about it. It's just maybe not exactly what you're expecting. So again, it is a DC fanboy's dream movie. Much better than the other animated Crisis live action, you know, or any of that stuff. Anything else with the word crisis in it that isn't a comic book. This is better than that. This is better than any you know, adaptation of any Crisis story, in my opinion. If you know the story, you know, I'd love to hear your opinion in the comments below. Of course, these films are also dedicated to two people. They're dedicated to the memory of the original Crisis artist, George Perez, and, of course, the late great voice of Batman, Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman. And, yeah, so, I mean, let's wrap it up here, right? All right, so overall, I did find the story complex. It's a bit convoluted. You know, like I said, you kind of want to go back and go, what happened to that guy? You know, but a good adaptation nonetheless, with great performances, lots of action, and suspense. So all three of these films are highly recommended, and I'm going to give Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 3 an 8.5 out of 10. Yes, see all three. All right, guys, that's it for me and this film review, and until next time, peace.